Like to call into session the City Council meeting of Yuba City, June 20th, 6 p.m. regular meeting. Let's see, there was nothing to report out of the closed session. If there's any comments on that people would like to have. Anybody at all? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Mayor Cleveland.
Here.
Vice Mayor Didball. Here. Councilmember Buckland.
Here.
Councilmember Cardoza.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
I will do the invocation, and would Ariana like to lead us in the pledge when it comes time, right afterward? Thank you. I want to thank you, mighty God, for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Yuba City and to work on the concerns and needs that they have. Give us your wisdom, your strength, and even the energy to continue on and make the best decisions as possible. And we thank you for your guidance and wisdom and protection in your great and mighty name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Ariana.
At least the seat's nice and cool.
Okay, we have presentations and proclamations, which is number one, police officer swearing in of 4 new cadets, and that's exciting. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. 4 new officers, come on up. We're going to introduce them. We're going to give a little bio after we swear them in.
Fantastic.
Okay. They want to see you and not me, so I could think of no better reason to come out here in our 100% wool today than to introduce our 4 brand new officers. Out of a class of 49 cadets that started at Dubuque College, 25 of them completed it, and 4 of them were our sponsored officers, so they did a very good job. We're happy to have them today. Okay, gentlemen, if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Robert Sargent,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestics,
foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
That I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully
That I will and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Okay, we're going to take a second here to introduce our officers individually, and then we'll call up the person of their choosing to pin their badge. First up tonight is going to be Officer Robert Sanchez. Officer Sanchez is from the Marysville-Loma Rica area. He graduated from Marysville High School, where he excelled at soccer and was selected as the team captain. He attended the School of Leadership Development and was involved with the Trauma Intervention Program. Robert has traveled on mission trips to Cambodia, Thailand, and Mexico. He joined the Marine Corps in 2009 and was honorably discharged at the rank of sergeant in 2013. 2 years later, he married Kelsey, whom he refers to as the love of his life. And pinning his badge tonight will be his wife, Kelsey Sanchez. Kelsey, you can come on up. Next up, we have Officer Carlton Braley. Officer Braley is from Manchester, New Hampshire. Along with his parents and step-parents, His family includes 2 older sisters and a younger brother, all from the New Hampshire area. He went into the Air Force at the age of 19 and served his country for 6 years. During his years of service, he deployed once to Afghanistan and a counter-narcotics deployment in South America. He was stationed at Beale Air Force Base prior to enrolling in the Butte Police Academy. Carlton graduated as the #1 cadet in his graduating class from Butte College. And pinning Carlton tonight will be a mentor, John Carrillo. Officer Martin Huichapan. Officer Huichapan was born in Guanajuato, Mexico. He came to the U.S. when he was 5 years old and has lived in the Olivehurst area all his life. He is the first in his family to attend college, graduating from Chico State with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. The first in his family to be in law enforcement, and he gives all his credit for his success to his parents for their steadfast encouragement and sacrifice. Pinning Martin tonight will be his father, Miguel Huichapan. Officer David Tarr. Officer Tarr grew up in both Marysville and Colusa. After graduating from Colusa High School in 2007, he attended Sacramento State and graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 2011. He then went on to San Diego State University and graduated in 2014 with a master's degree in Homeland Security. While at San Diego State, he had the opportunity to study abroad in France. In his free time, he enjoys spending time on his boat. He lives in Marysville with his girlfriend, Danessa, and his dog, Bentley. Pinning David tonight will be his father, Dave Tarr.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing us to present their swearing today, doing that. And Jacob Ernst is the one who just finished his FTO program, so that's the guy you guys need to see.
Right, for our new officers and their family members, if you'd like to take an opportunity outside for some additional photos, we've got a nice area for that.
We'll let it exit out there, but I can say that is just thrilling for me to see because I have a son that's actually Air Force, 15 years, and a son that's Sacramento County Deputy Sheriff now, and seeing young men and women when they do show up, because we do have some great women on our force. Just busts my buttons. I love it.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
And this isn't a brag point, but these 4 gentlemen graduated the 239th Basic Academy, and I might have preceded them by a couple hundred academies up there because I was at the 21st Basic. So.
Okay, I was supposed to make a little bit of an announcement previous to that, police swearing in. We have a summer at City Hall program that's going on now. I'd like to recognize the students of our of that program who are here this evening. They're watching us and how we do it, and they see now that things do get out of order and missed. These students have spent the past 3 weeks learning about local government by taking tours and field trips, job shadowing, and speaking with many of our local elected officials. Tonight, the students are attending our council meeting in preparation for holding their own mock council meeting at 1 p.m. Thursday, June 22nd, here in these chambers. And you're invited to come in and watch them perform and do what they're doing. So it's great. And I would like you all to stand, each of the students. Okay. And then also the assistants, the teacher and the assistant, please. These are the ones that are walking them through. Oh, yep, you can stand too. You've been helping a lot too. And they've been helping them get through it. Okay, you may be seated. This is the second annual Summer at City Hall that we're hoping to expand and get other communities involved in the same type of a program, learning what really goes on within the city and the many departments and the many things that have to go on to ensure that a city actually operates. And hopefully it operates well, which I think we do. So thank you again for that. Okay, moving on to number 2, public safety presentation, fire by Chief Pete Daly. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Cleveland and members of City Council. I'm before you tonight on my semi-annual presentation where I come before the council and kind of let you know what's going on with the fire department. Busy time for us and a lot going on, and not just because it's hot and fire season, but lots of other things. So I'm here tonight to kind of share some what we're doing right now in the fire department. So in the fire service, I've always had a philosophy, even when I was the division chief of operations, and that is I keep it real simple for our firefighters. And my motto has always been to get the right engine with the right people to the right location in the right time and do the right thing. And if we're doing that, then we're providing the best customer service we can to our citizens and our visitors here in our community. So that's kind of the emphasis of everything you're going to see tonight. So a lot going on personnel-wise, promotions and recruitments. Currently, I have promotions in almost in every category we have in the fire department. Everything from battalion chief to fire captain to fire apparatus operator to full-time firefighters, as well as SAFA grant firefighters I'll be replacing in the next few months. As you can see, the column on the left is my emergency personnel, my line staff that respond to emergencies, and the column on the right is my administrative staff. The ones on the left, those will take priority. We'll fill the line staff positions first, and we're in the process of doing that. And then the administrative staff will fill as we go along. On the administrative staff, I'll be looking at filling the fire marshal position, an administrative analyst position, an administrative clerk position, and then an assistant fire chief. I pushed off the assistant fire chief because the police chief was gracious enough to loan me the operations manager from the PD, Shauna Pavey. So she's kind of filling in some of those roles for me. So she's taking care of some of those duties so I can focus on line staff. So lots of promotions and recruitments going on this summer and through the end of the year. Training-wise, probably we do training every day. We do 2 hours of training every day for all our fire personnel. That's a given for us. That's 240 hours a year, basically. But on top of that, we do other training, specialized training. Some of the training we're focusing on right now, and I'll talk about it here in a few minutes, is we're training some of our people up to the hazardous materials specialist level. That's a very intense training. It's about 240 hours of training to be able to respond to hazardous materials incidences. And that's going to be sponsored through the state. We also have, along with that, a separate 40-hour course for a hazardous materials safety officer, and that training is being provided to a select few, as well as a hazmat instructor class. Some of the internal stuff that we've been working on is we just completed the 14 that we hired last year. We got them all through a week of training of driver operator 1A on how to properly check out and handle emergency vehicles, fire engines, and driver operator 1B, which dealt with more of the pumping aspects of driving and pumping a vehicle and pumping water. So we were able to get them through 2 weeks of training of some of our newer firefighters. Our new firefighters are doing great. The ones that we hired last year, we had a goal to get them within 24 months. Our goal was to get them through what we call Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2. That was the goal. Within 14 months, they surpassed that. They were able to get through Firefighter 1, through Firefighter 2, and now they're working on operator skills. So they've done a tremendous job for us. We're also working on recruiting some additional firefighters, and when they come on board, we'll put them through a 6-week academy like we did last year for the other firefighters. So quite a bit of training going on. Some of the new apparatus we're going to be looking at that's been approved for the budget, and we'll be looking at a new type, what we call a Type 1 engine. And we're in the process of replacing some of our engines that have 20, 25 years on them. We put a lot of miles on our engines, and so which is good. We get a good use out of them, but we were definitely due for some replacement. So this year we'll be looking at replacing a new Type 1 engine. It'll either go at station 1 or 2, depending on where the need is, and I'll rely on the mechanics to tell me what's best to replace. We'll also be looking at a new battalion chief vehicle. Probably be doing something similar to like what I did for my vehicle. We'll be looking at probably like a Chevy Tahoe, something along those lines. The one we have right now, the battalion chief rig, we put in service in 2001. So we've been using it for 16, 17 years. So we got some good use out of it, but we need to replace that. The other thing that we're working on this year is we're looking at, for the first time, having a new rescue, which has air and light capability. This saves us some money because it doesn't take the place of an engine, but it allows me to do a lot of the things that a big fire engine can do, as far as having some of the rescue equipment. It'll also have a lot of air capability and light capability at the fire scene. So that way we can light up the fire scene real well and also be able to provide breathing air for our breathing apparatus. And that'll be a big plus for us to have this unit. And this unit is far less expensive than a new fire engine. It also keeps the engines available for other types of fire calls if we have to keep at the scene for lighting or for air. Another piece of apparatus I brought to you a couple weeks ago was our new hazardous materials unit rig. We'll be getting that through the California Office of Emergency Services. They will be loaning that to us for our use. That's about a $500,000 piece of equipment. It'll be brand new, and that should be issued to us shortly. We just signed up the last of the contracts for the vehicle, and we'll be going down to do about 3 days of training down at Mather Air Force Base, where Cal OES is located, and we'll be doing training with them before we take possession of the vehicle. Along with that vehicle, hazardous materials is very specialized, so along with that vehicle comes with about $300,000 worth of equipment inside that vehicle for free. Such things as protective chemical suits, detection equipment, decontamination equipment, gas detectors, chemicals, chemical identification kits, and leak kits for different types of hazardous material spills that we go on. So you can see when we send people, not only do we need the vehicle, but the reason the training comes along with it is because that 240 hours of training is just dedicated on how to deal with all different types of hazardous materials, everything from gasoline to diesel to pesticides, any type of chemical you can think of, we deal with it. And then we have to deal with it in different circumstances. Sometimes it's on the road, sometimes it's by rail, sometimes it's at a fixed facility. Future in the apparatus, probably in a couple years, I'll be coming back to you at some point and buying probably one more Type 1 engine or asking approval for one more Type 1 engine, like I'm in the upper left there. That'll finish us out as far as replacing the majority of our first outline equipment and should put us in a really good position for quite a few years. And at some point, I'll need to come back and talk about an aerial ladder. Our aerial ladder we have right now is 1990. It services very well. So we're about 27 years into that piece of equipment, but at some point down the road, we'll need to look at replacing it or something like that. Some other equipment that we've received on grants, so I call ancillary equipment, and is a Department of Fish and Game. We were successful this year in getting from the Office of Spill Prevention and Recovery, also known as OSPR. We were successful in getting an OSPR grant for $35,000, which included this trailer, but I promise you it will not be this color, okay? It will be either white or red, something that'll look nice, okay? I don't know why they painted it this yellow. But it's about a $35,000 trailer, and it comes with all of the equipment inside, all the containment booms and all that kind of stuff, as well as it also comes with the training along with it. So our Swiftwater Rescue team, along with certain people from our hazmat team, will be trained on how to deploy the booms and the other type of equipment that we have in there in case we have some type of spill in the river to protect our waterways and as well protect our drinking water. So in case they have something on the railroad that crosses the river, or up north if something happens and spills into the river, we can do some work with it before it causes us problems. So that's a nice piece of equipment we get to add to the department. The other big thing that we're going to do this year is every 15 years we're required per National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, to replace our breathing apparatus. Our breathing apparatus is what we wear on our backs when we go into fires. It allows us to go into IDLH atmospheres that are not good for people to breathe in, and be able to rescue people or perform some of the functions that we do. These are not cheap pieces of equipment. They're very technical and they're very expensive. To replace the fleet of our approximately 55 SCPAs that we have in the department, probably looking close to about $600,000. We were successful last year on a grant, and we'll be going after that grant again pretty aggressively, and my goal is to get that grant. If I don't get that grant, I'll be coming back and visiting the council, unfortunately. But we will have to replace those in March of 18 because believe it or not, the bottles on the packs themselves are no longer can be transported per DOT. So we've extended the life of those bottles and those packs. And those packs are about 15 years old, so we've had them for about 15 years, and we've got our use out of them. Another grant that we were successful in was another Homeland Security grant. I've also been in the process of replacing all of our extrication equipment. Our extrication equipment is commonly referred to as a jaws of life. That's what we use on vehicle accidents or other types of situations where people are trapped in vehicles, in buildings, whatever it may be. Anything that we need to move some heavy equipment or open some doors or tear off a roof to get to access people, to get them out in a safe manner, especially vehicle accidents is the main use for these. We have a set on each piece of engine, and I believe this is our 4th or 5th set that we'll be getting on a grant that we've received on a grant every time. So these were all replaced through the grant process. And it comes with cutters and spreaders and different types of equipment. So that's another piece of equipment we received. Another grant that we put in for, our Assistance to Firefighter grant, that'll be for 6 gas meters. We'll be replacing the gas meters on each engine that we have. We use that commonly for things like when you call us for carbon monoxide, your carbon monoxide detector is going off. We can use this device to see if there's carbon monoxide inside the building and other types of gases, low oxygen levels, things like that. So not a real expensive piece of equipment, but it's something that we need to replace on a regular basis because this is something that is very important to us because we don't want to give false information. So they have to be calibrated and well taken care of. The other thing we put in for a grant, if I'm not successful this, I will not be coming back to the council. I'll just put in for another grant, hopefully. But I'm hoping that we'll be successful for a new video conferencing system. What's unique about this system is in the past, it was just within our own city fire department. We had it set up for all 5 fire stations in our admin building to where we could do training at our fire administration building and keep all the firefighters in their stations. If anyone knows me, my main focus, getting back to my motto is getting people there in the right time. Response times are everything for me. When someone's not breathing or we have a working fire, the quicker we can get resources on scene, the quicker we can mitigate the situation. So one way we can achieve that, but we have to provide training to our firefighters. So one of the ways we can provide that training is through the use of video conferencing system. We have a very nice conferencing system in our classroom, but it's about 15 years old and they don't repair it anymore. And also it's got 15-year technology. So you can imagine that it doesn't do quite the things as today's technology can do. So we put in for a grant, but I also extend the offer to the regional departments. So we're actually reaching out to 6 fire departments, such as Sutter County, Marysville, Linda, Olivehurst, who am I missing? Wheatland and Yuba City, and which would touch about 16 facilities. And so we all put in for this grant together. It's a regional grant. We found that we're more successful with regional grants than we are with independent grants. So we're hoping with this regional grant we'll be successful and we'll be funded for a video conferencing system that we can use for training as well as for disasters.
Before you move on, this equipment, and if you are successful, having all the major jurisdictions, ability to talk to each other real time, you'd be able to utilize that also for emergencies of, like the one we just occurred. We could actually get some real-time discussion and accurate information back and forth between each other immediately rather than trying to get in contact with each other.
Absolutely. And it's also very expandable. So if we want to start including other city and county government agencies, we could do that as well. So
Part of that real-time information goal that we're promoting very strongly, right?
absolutely. I
All over
support
that.
that 100%.
Thank you.
Through the mayor. Hey, Chief, that 300,000, is that times 6 or is that grand total for the 6?
That's the grand total.
Okay.
So our facility, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that at our classroom at admin building, we kind of hosted it. So our portion is, I think, off the top of my head, for some reason, 67,000 sticks in my mind, just for our classroom area, because I want to make sure that the main hub is at our classroom, so we can have good control over everything that goes on with it, as far as maintenance and care and having the flexibility to use the system. Facilities, real quick. We're also active in facilities right now. As you know, we have 5 fire stations in the admin building. Those fire stations are occupied 24/7, 365 days a year. So it's like having maintaining a house. So we have 5 houses that I'm responsible for as well. Incrementally, we've been updating our fire stations and bringing them up to a better living standard. Some of them are in really good shape. Some are a little bit older. Station 2 here is the one I'll be focusing on this year and last year. Last year, in the upper picture, you can see is what the front looked like before we made some modifications to it. We did not have ADA parking. We had grass out there. We had not real good asphalt. The asphalt was deteriorating. This building was here when I came here in '85, and so basically we had a house that was been used for about 32 years, 33 years, and hadn't had a lot of maintenance. So the first thing we did on phase 1 was we put the ADA parking in the front and did took care of some landscape items. Phase 2 we completed last year. We put up a perimeter, a security fence, exterior lighting, which we didn't have, and we also provided parking, new concrete access and parking. And believe it or not, the concrete is unbelievable amount of concrete we had to use for these fire engines because they weigh about 40,000 pounds. So it's not like 4 inches of concrete you put in your driveway. I think it was anywhere from 8 to 10 inches of concrete was how thick the concrete was. And it was special concrete just so that it was 20 to 25 year concrete. So that way we can make sure that it's durable for us. And then also I had them put in a pad for an expansion because this is one of our smaller fire stations. It's on Gray Avenue at 1641 Gray. There's another picture of the front with some drought tolerant landscaping and our ADA access. In the back, you can see the amount of concrete that we put in, as well as security fencing. And then we left a pad back there that we'll be working on this year, which will be adding some square footage and making a larger dormitory, as well as remodeling the inside. And we were funded for that. And that's a huge project for us. And I'm really appreciative of the council for approving that because this is a big deal for us because it's a very small facility to put firefighters in. Our other facilities, Station 3 and 4, we got some basic stuff going on. Basically, we need some paint on the outside and the inside at Station 3, which is located down on Lincoln and Railroad. And we got some new flooring we're going to be putting in. One of the things we're doing is I'm remodeling these stations. I'm making sure they're MRSA compliant. In other words, we brought a specialist in to review some of our fire stations because we go on a lot of medical calls and sometimes we get exposed to things. We want to make sure that when the firefighters come back that we have the right type of material in the stations and the right type of protective procedures put in place so that we don't bring it back to the fire station and infect other people. So Fire Station 4, which is our newest station, it does need some paint on the exterior. We'll be working on that. And also we have a lot of concrete back there that we need to reinforce some of the joints in between the concrete and get some caulking and stuff like that put in there in that area to keep that concrete in good condition. So 3 and 4, minor maintenance stuff this year. Our fire administration building, same thing. We'll be removing some of the carpet and putting in some better flooring. That carpet's the original when it was built. We have some security fencing that we're going to be putting up. We put in for some assistance from FEMA because some of that fencing was damaged during the storm. So we're hoping about $7,000 to $10,000 of that is on FEMA money. It's about a $20,000 project. I'm also always working on a way to get rid of our water tower. And so I will give it away for free if someone wants to come take it. But actually, I've been working with AT&T quite a bit because their contract is going to be expired soon, and they have antennas on the top. So I've given them an incentive of build me a monopole, take the tower, and we'll work out a deal for rental space. So hopefully that'll work out for us. So there's some long-term projects we're working on there. Fire Station 1 is probably the challenge that will be before us in the next couple of years. My goal over the next couple of years is to do an analysis of Station 1 to see what's the best use of that facility as far as remodel or rebuild. And so we'll be looking at that. We'll be doing some analysis on that so I can bring back to the council and for some guidance on that as well down the road. The other thing we're working on long-term down the road is I've been working with other department heads, and we've been going through a couple of phases of an EOC training center, an EOC and a public safety training center. I think it's well needed in this area for both police and fire and other agencies as well. We have room at Station 4. We have 10 acres out there, and we've been working on some conceptual drawings. We've visited some sites. We know there's no funding here at the local level, so we've been looking at funding at other public funding sources, and we're also looking at other private sources. We have a lot of interest from the private sector as well to help us with it, and so we're hoping down the road, either incrementally, we can get this plan off and going in the next couple of years, because I think it would be nice to have a good training facility here in our community that could actually turn into a regional training public safety training center. So that's the other thing that we're looking at. Just in general, we've been kind of step up our community outreach. We've kind of stepped up our Facebook posts, especially now that we have Miss Pavey over in our department. She's really good at that. So she's had the opportunity to get us out there more. Some of our public education events we stepped up on. And so we've been keeping pretty busy on that end as well. Last but not least, our fireworks. So we've been hitting our campaign for our illegal and dangerous fireworks. Our motto is safe and sane or feel the pain, $1,000 fine. So working with the police department and the police chief and the council and the city manager, we're going to be very serious this year about addressing illegal fireworks. It may take a year or two for us to get the message out, but I think when a few people feel the pain, hopefully that message will spread in a positive way, and that we'll use the appropriate fireworks, the safe and sane fireworks that are sold at the fireworks stands and not those sold illegally. That's okay. I don't remember exactly where this video came from, but I believe it was from a drone in a neighborhood.
That's in front of my house, Chief.
Well, I wasn't gonna be specific, so.
I think that was in front of about 3 or 4 dozen home regions.
And I also think this was on July the 15th. This was the continuation of 4th of July.
So I know the council and the city manager and the police chief myself are very serious about illegal fireworks this year. It's going to be one of those things that it's kind of gotten out of control the last couple of years. We're going to start reeling it in. We're going to do our best. It's going to take us a little while, but I think that that over a short period of time, hopefully we'll be successful. Because we're going to have challenges if we're not, whether it's fires or whether people getting hurt. And I've been on both, and it's not a fun place to be. All the fun stops when someone's house is burning or someone's lost fingers or hands or something like that, or eyesight. Some of the awareness that we're doing for the Safe and Sane is water bill inserts have gone out to residents. Social media blasts have begun, including staff videos. We'll be using our rapid notify system. That's our disaster notification system. So everyone in the city will be getting a phone call, letting people know that at some point between now and July 4th, you may get a little 15 or 20-second voicemail that basically says, hey, don't use illegal fireworks because we're going to be out there. We'll be having fireworks booths at Summer Stroll. We did that already. Prospect Magazine, we've got articles. Extra patrols have already started beginning, from my understanding, a little bit. We'll be beefing that up as we get close to the 4th. We have our YC311 application. Social media and radio interviews will be occurring, and so you'll be hearing a lot of those as you listen to the radio. And we'll have posters on the fireworks booths as well as handouts about not using or buying illegal fireworks. This is what we want. So we want to have a good time on the 4th of July with all our kids and have our parade. And I love our parade, and I love the fireworks that go along with it. I don't want to see anyone hurt at the end of the day, and that's really what the goal is, and loss of property. So with that, I'd be happy answering questions.
The other thing I have is how could these citizens that are out here at this meeting actually make phone calls? What's the process to actually alert the fire and the police starting now as people are setting things off? And the video, the pictures, or report, how would they do that?
The YC311 app is one of the best ways. Calling the dispatch center at the police department's a second way. If you want it during Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you can call the administrative building. And if you say, hey, last night my neighbor was doing this, then you know what? That night we may just send a fire engine by just to drive by and see what's going on and see if he's doing it again or she's doing it again. We got no problem knocking on doors if we need to just let people know that we're going to be watching this stuff. If there's neighbors in the neighborhood that continually do it every year, I have no problem sending crews out to just have a friendly talk and say, hey, this year, not a good idea. So hopefully between all of that, we should be able to, we're not going to, I think what's important to understand is it was challenging for us last year. I was literally, when the fire chief's running from call to call, it's a bad thing. That means all the engines are tied up. And that's literally what was happening last year was the chief land and myself were running from one place to another. And so we're going to try really hard to curve that this year as much as possible.
Would do videos taken by cell phones or anything be of any good assistance as long as there is identifier of where it is?
You know, I'd have to defer to the police chief, and he's not here right now on the videos. I don't know if I can use those or not, but I guess the best thing to do is just use the app, call us,
Okay.
and if you know ahead of time, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to visit neighbors ahead of time and just get the word out.
Okay.
I'll be happy to, if a neighborhood group wants to get together and they want discussion, I'd be happy to meet with them as well as a group.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, and I'd just really like to reinforce what the chief just said. The best approach we can use as a city is the preventative approach, meaning rather than having the chiefs running around on the 4th of July, if people know historically certain neighbors, we all have them, have been very eager in lighting off fireworks. It's a matter of just asking law enforcement or the fire department to go out as a preventative measure, visit them, at which time most people will probably deny that they ever did any such things. And they'll say, okay, just want to make sure, thank you very much. And it will probably prevent a good number of those people repeating that this year because they'll know that there'll be a watchful eye on them. So YC311 again, or the dispatch number, staff would really like to encourage our citizens. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from council? Well, great presentation and wonderful future it looks like we have if you're successful on all those grants and everything. It's very nice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have, moving on to public hearings, consideration of the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Annual Action Plan by Arnaldo Rodriguez.
I do.
Good to see you tonight.
Likewise, Mayor. As Terrell's pulling up the presentation, Arnaldo Rodriguez, Development Services Department, the chief obviously set an extremely high bar there. He even got an applause, so I'm expecting the same thing from everyone. So the item before you this evening is the city's annual community block development grant. Just for the benefit of the council and the community members here this evening, the city of Yuba City is an entitlement city. And what that entails, it's every city, HUD, typically they'll allocate funds for communities of greatest need. The city historically we automatically receive those funds as long as those funds are spent appropriately. This year, our allocation funds came through, our allocation dollar amount came through last Friday. And this year, we're anticipating, or the upcoming fiscal year, we're anticipating of receiving $586,000. To put that in perspective, last year we received $580,000. The year before that, I believe, it was $564,000. The program itself is intended to, I'm just going to jump a couple of slides, or one slide. It's intended to provide decent housing, a suitable living environment, and to expand economic opportunities primarily for low and moderate income families. So with that being said, on an annual basis, there's 2 reports that come before the the City Council. So one of them is the action plan, and the action plan typically comes May or June of every year. And what that plan does is it identifies the needs of the upcoming fiscal year. The upcoming fiscal year being July 1st through the end of June. And then in September, we typically come back where we discuss what the city did the previous fiscal year. And then we've grown accustomed to every March, we'll typically come before the City Council and we'll do a workshop to discuss goals and opportunities and different items that were currently in that fiscal year. Or we typically update the City Council in terms of our conversations that we've had with HUD, and we are in constant contact with HUD. So the city does have some discretion in terms of how we allocate those dollars. However, within that, we do have some guidelines that we have to comply with. The very first one, it does have to be allocated for housing activities, rural property investments, or any type of economic development. The program admin is capped at 20%, so that's a maximum. Obviously, a jurisdiction cannot obviously allocate less for admin, however, you cannot exceed the 20%. And then on top of that, local jurisdictions cannot exceed 15% in terms of public services. Historically, the city has allocated the maximum to both of those, which I'll discuss in a few minutes. So in terms of our communication with HUD, we are in constant contact with HUD via email, via conference calls, and they've even conducted a site visit approximately a year and a couple of months ago. One of the things that HUD has identified is that they've strongly encouraged the city to try to minimize what they would refer to as smaller grants. And when I'm taking a little bit of liberty really with the word encourage, because they're strongly encouraging it. I'm not saying you absolutely have to do it, but they said, we really want you to, and typically when HUD tells you that, you typically understand exactly what they're saying. And so with that being said, they've also strongly suggested that we eliminate our NRSA program. The NRSA program, which is the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy Area, was initially prepared as a 5-year program with the sunset clause. We are in year 7 or year 7.5, and with that, during our discussions with HUD, they again strongly encouraged us to eliminate that program. That's not to say that we cannot allocate funds for those programs or continue to do those activities. However, the language itself has to be eliminated out of our program. Moving forward, our goal is to continue to allocate funds for those types of programs and actually continue to do the same thing we've been doing. However, we do have to eliminate the program itself and the language within our plan. If it sounds a bit confusing, it is. So this year we're anticipated to receive $586,000. Those funds still have to go through Congress, and they still have to be appropriated by Congress. Overall, the city received 21 applications this year, and the request amount for those 21 applications was close to $1.2 million. So obviously, unfortunately, the city cannot fund all of the grant applications. We can fund approximately half of those. So in terms of how we allocate those funds, we do go out and we put an RFP out, which is a request for proposals. We provide a 30-day notice, and at that point, we receive grant applications from local providers. We also had an informal meeting with potential providers on February the 27th, and then after that, at the close of the RFP period, staff got together, including 2 of our consultants, and we went through the actual applications and we ranked and rated those applications. Staff is recommending that the full 20% expenditure cap for planning and admin be granted. And the primary reason for that is that So that does pay for staff time, consultant time, training opportunities. On top of that, after the close of the fiscal year, there's still follow-up that the city has to do for several years. So it's not, July 1st of one year, we take those files and we throw them away. However, there's ongoing monitoring and really a lot of audits that come in. So we have to retain those files on site. And whenever HUD calls us, we usually have to go retrieve those files. Staff is also proposing to expend 50% on the public services, which would equate to roughly $88,000. We did receive a total application request of approximately $149,000. So again, unfortunately, we can't grant all of that. However, I'll get into the specifics actually now. And I apologize that the white doesn't come out very clear. So we had 5 public agencies, or 5 agencies, I should say, provide grant applications. We are proposing funding for all 5 of those. And the first one being Bridges to Housing, Central Valley Homeless, Salvation Army, Hands of Hope, and Sutter Yuba Homeless Consortium. So with that, instead of granting it to the 5 agencies, though, we devised a plan at HUD's suggestion that we try to minimize or that we attempt to consolidate like programs. And so one of the things that we did is that we reached out to our service providers. We had a meeting and we asked, is there a way where we can group some of these programs? And they were on board with it. So this year we are proposing to allocate roughly $49,000 to the Sutter Yuba Homeless Consortium, which is broken down on 4 agencies, which is on my next slide, and then the Salvation Army, independent of those agencies, of close to $39,000. The primary reason for that is they have slightly different focuses, and at the same time, the Salvation Army is going through a transition period where they have a whole new team there, and we felt that it would be best to simply separate them for this upcoming year. That's not to say in the following year, in 2017, 2018, that we would not attempt to consolidate those. So as part of the Sutter Yuba Homeless Consortium, we are recommending Bridges to Housing receive $10,000, Central Valley Homeless $10,000, and Hands of Hope of $5,000. And for the consortium's efforts, we're proposing to allocate an additional $1,800 in terms of what they had requested for the administration of the program, and everyone's on board. We've spoken with all 4 agencies, and they're all amenable to this, and they're all encouraged by our efforts. The remaining 65% of the funds, we're proposing to grant the Public Works Department of the city roughly $174,000, and that's for ADA improvements. We're proposing a new playground structure at Southside Park of close to $100,000. The Regional Housing Authority for 2 different projects of roughly $97,000. $57,000 would go to the Kingwood Commons for a new roof. The remaining $40,000 would go to the Richland Housing Project for new roofs along Garden Highway for some of the duplexes that are in that area. And then we would be granting Freed approximately $10,000. Historically, the city has granted additional dollars to the city for the Public Works Department for sidewalk improvements and ADA improvements, traditionally between $274,000 and $300,000. With that being said, we're going to get pretty close, which I'm going to dive into next. So as part of this program, there are a handful of amendments that staff is proposing to previous years. The primary reason for this is because of the deletion of the NRSA program. On top of that, we had a handful of funds that were unused funds from previous years. The first being $15,000. So we did have some unspent fund from previous years, and it wasn't one project. However, what happened is we had multiple projects dating back several years, and they're relatively small dollar amounts, $3,000 here, $2,000 there, $2,500. So what we did is we consolidated those. We spoke with HUD, and we said, is this appropriate? They agreed, and they're amenable to it. So therefore, we're proposing that an additional $15,800 go to Public Works, and this is above and beyond the $174,000 that I discussed on the previous slide. With the deletion of the NRSA program, we have a couple of amendments that we have to go through. And so with that, there was an additional $8,100 that were allocated in last year's budget, specifically targeting the NRSA program areas. Again, because we have to delete that program, those dollars are being freed up, but we're proposing to put them right back into Public Works for the same exact projects in the same neighborhoods. And then there's an additional $70,000. This was targeted last year again for the NRSA program, However, at HUD's encouragement, we're deleting that, and therefore we have to reappropriate those funds. And then there's an additional $10,000 that was unused by Salvation Army last year. They had run into a couple of issues. They were proposing some facility improvements, and unfortunately, they weren't able to complete those. We provided them an extension, and after talking or speaking with Salvation Army extensively, we collectively believed that it was best to simply reallocate those funds moving forward. So those $80,000 would also go to Public Works for ADA. So in total, in this upcoming year, we're proposing to allocate $174,000 for ADA improvements, again, to the Public Works Department. However, the $15,000, 3 or 4 slides ago, would also go for ADA improvements, as would the $8,100 from this year's, in the current fiscal years that were unused, the $10,000 from Salvation Army, and then the $70,000 for a grand total of $278,000 and some change there. So that would bring it in line to historic patterns for ADA improvements. As part of our discussions with both Habitat for Humanity and the Housing Authority, Habitat for Humanity is the only agency that we are not proposing to provide funding for the fiscal years or for the upcoming fiscal year. With that being said, though, this provided us an opportunity to go back to the Housing Authority. They had some excess funds from last year that were unspent, and quite frankly, we asked the Housing Authority to give us back $25,000. And what we're going to do in turn is we're going to re-award that to Habitat for Humanity. The caveat being there is that they do have to spend the money by the end of the year. However, from speaking with Habitat, they have a waiting list for owner-occupied improvement programs. So they do have a waiting list. So we don't anticipate absolutely any issues with them expending those dollars in the next 6.5 months. So in terms of resolutions, there's a handful of resolutions. Typically, when this program comes before the City Council, there's usually one resolution. In this case, because of the amendments, there are multiple resolutions. So the very first resolution, staff is recommending that the council approve the 2017-2018 annual action plan, and that we would reallocate the $15,812.02 from the previous year's CDBG funds in this upcoming fiscal year. We are also recommending that the council approve an amendment to the 2016-2017 action plan, specifically because of the deletion of the NRSA program. And then that we have another resolution for an amendment to the consolidated plan and the annual plan, of course, being the $10,000 of unused funds from the Salvation Army, the $70,000 from the NRSA program, and one final resolution, and that would be to reappropriate the $25,000 from Habitat for Humanity. I'm sorry, from the Housing Authority to Habitat for Humanity of $25,000, which also includes a 6-month extension, considering that the funds initially had to be spent by the end of this fiscal year, which is in a couple of weeks. And then at the same time to authorize staff to submit all of these documents to HUD for their review and approval. So that was a mouthful. Thank you very much for indulging staff, and staff's ready to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments from council members? Please.
Arnaldo, on the public service activities where you go to the Yuba City Homeless Consortium, the division between Bridges to Housing, Central Valley Homeless, and Hands of Hope was 10, 10, and 5. Just curious how those numbers came to be.
So one of the things kind of that we were looking at is we looked at their programs for the upcoming year. We ranked them, we rated them in terms of their target audience, in terms of how dollars from previous years were allocated, how they were spent, how our auditing program went, because there are annual audits that we have to go on site, staff goes on there. If I recall, Bridges to Housing requested slightly, a little bit more than $10,000. Central Valley Homeless requested, I believe, $15,000. And if I recall, Hands of Hope had requested slightly more. These were all the minimums that they requested. So as part of the application program, they can request a maximum and a minimum. And one of the things that we're trying to do is obviously we're trying to be fair. All three programs provide excellent services, slightly different target audiences or target groups. And at the end of the day, when we ranked them based on where those funds were going to be spent for the upcoming year, we thought that that was the best use of funds for this upcoming year.
Was there any consideration given to how many non-duplicated clients that they had? The number of people that they're serving?
Yeah, so that's another thing that we looked at, were how many clients they actually served in the past year and how many, and the number of clients that they were anticipating on serving in the upcoming year. So it's both target group, their target audience, based on need. And at the end of the day, the committee felt that it was most appropriate to allocate those funds.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess I'll open this to the public. Any public wishing to speak on this matter may do so at this time. Seeing nobody jumping up, bring it back to the council. The one comment that I will definitely make is, it sounds like to me there has been a high level of discussion and cooperation between the different organizations. We've been working toward that for a few years. The Homeless Consortium, I served on that as a supervisor or volunteered, and they were trying to achieve exactly what you're talking about is going on in the past. And it's nice to see that we're able to start facilitate their ability to actually be an umbrella distribution for things instead of being a competition.
Absolutely.
Because they would have to be in competition for these CDBG and stuff through the state and the federal process. And this way, they become a direct recipient through the city, and it eliminates some of the mess that can occur for double applications from some of them. So I'm encouraged to see some of these changes. So it looks very nice this time. Yes, yes.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
So I don't have any questions, but I do have a couple of comments. It's very nice to see the cleanup work that was done through this process to go back and reallocate some of the funds. Also, the elimination of some programming that was going on. But certainly the outreach that was done by staff, yourself and staff, to be able to reach into the various organizations and come to a resolution where the dollars that are provided through HUD are of benefit to the community and to some specific groups. So I applaud you for the work. There's nothing easy goes into this process with the number of hearings that go on and the opportunities that you have to reach out and meet with different folks. So it's a great public benefit, especially on some of the ADA improvements that are done throughout our community. So I thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you.
So now I'm looking for a resolution adopting number 3, the B, C, D, and E, along with the actual resolution, amended resolution for, I think it's B, on item number 3, what we received, which was the increase of $6,000 to the resolution. I'm looking for action on that.
I'll make a motion for approval on exactly what you just said. Why repeat the whole
I had to
thing?
go through this and make sure we had it right.
I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous vote. Thank you very much, and good work, because I know we kept you busy on this one, you and your staff. Thank you. See, even they liked it. Man, you're doing real good.
You got what you asked for.
But you can't leave.
No, right.
We have another act to come up now, which is another one of public consideration of a general plan amendment, rezone, development plan, and tentative subdivision map to facilitate the development of the Yuba Crossings Project, a mixed-use complex on Franklin Road north of Winco Shopping Center, that open area that gets weeds in it and stuff. This is the preliminary plans right here in paper. when they actually start getting in here, as a construction guy, they get real thick on construction. But Arnaldo, go at it.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the audience loves me so much, I'm back for an encore. So the item this evening before you, as the mayor stated, is for the Yuba City is for the Yuba Crossings project. So this project, it's been a long project in the making. I've been directly working with the applicant, their architect, their representatives, the traffic engineer. I think I was here maybe 2 months, so I'm going on about 22 months of working on this project with the applicant. We've seen a lot of different conversions of the project come before us, and I'd like to think it was a very iterative process, and it shows great collaboration by both the applicant and city staff. So the applicant itself, or the project itself, it's a general plan amendment, a subdivision map to subdivide the property to sell it. It's a rezone application, and it's a development plan. But before I start jumping into what this project does, just in way of background, a couple of things about this site. It's probably on the radar of a couple of the city council members, is that in 2012, there was an application that came before the city council, and initially this property was actually planned and zoned for residential uses. They converted it to commercial. Now, part of the plan is to take more than half of it back to its original designation of residential. So the project that was approved back in 2013, should this project be approved, would supersede the original approval, so the original approval would die. A couple of things, just for the benefit of the city council and the audience this evening. This is a photo that was taken roughly 2 weeks ago of the site. This is directly across the street from Winco, so when you pull up to the signal light when you're going northbound outside of Winco, the house that was demolished was actually demolished as part of this project. The owner also owns the house, and unfortunately, it's right off the photograph immediately to the left of that, and that house would also be demolished as part of this plan. The site itself has been fenced off for a couple of years now, or for roughly 2 years, and there are approximately 7 homes that were demolished in November of 2015 at the request of the city as part of this project, and that's where some of those homes were at. So the project itself, so this photo still shows the homes, these right here, but obviously this Google aerial photo is a little dated because those homes were demolished, as was this one right here a couple of weeks ago, or roughly 2 months or so ago. So the project itself, again, is 8.7 acres and is currently planned for commercial uses. So this proposal is a request to amend roughly 6 acres of the overall 8.7 acre site, 5.9 acres to be exact. The northern portion of it from the commercial to the low density. That would facilitate, or that would allow the council to approve the rezone. And that's the site, so that would be the new designation. The northernmost 2/3 of it would go from the community commercial to the low density commercial. The zoning is currently, which is on the left, is C2. The proposed zoning, which is on the right, the northern portion of it, of course, being single family, which is R1. Almost every subdivision in the city of Yuba City, if it has a single family home, it's zoned R1. If it has an apartment complex, it's zoned R3. The southern portion of it would be C2X. The reason for the X is that's a development plan overlay. And in terms of approving the project that the applicant's proposing, the X overlay is required. Not every piece of property in the city has an X overlay. This would be the 25th X overlay in the city out of all the parcels that we have. And that just highlights the parcel itself. The city does have a parcel proximate to this area, or immediately adjacent to this area. And the reason that the city had purchased this property and demolished a home a number of years ago was for the completion of OG Way. OG Way is identified as a street in the city's circulation element, and it would eventually go from the existing shopping center, which again at the Winco being the southern end, and it would go all the way to Bridge Road. However, before it gets to Bridge Road, it would actually traverse Weiler, which is on the south side of the Dollar General and the Nissan dealership, which are right to the north. As part of this project, that road would not continue. However, I'll get into a discussion shortly here, They would be improving the southernmost 160 lineal feet, and that would allow people to access this site, which they're proposing for development, directly from the intersection. So people at the intersection would be able to go northbound to access the site. So in terms of OG Way, at the request of the Planning Commission, and staff supports this, OG Way would be developed as part of phase 1 of this project. This project is proposed in 2 phases, which I'll discuss in a later slide. So access could be, so there would be 2 points of access. One of them would be from a drive approach around the middle of the parcel, and then OG Way. In terms of development impact fees, every new project in the city is required to pay development impact fees for road improvements. The total project cost for the 89 units that are proposed here, approximately 15,000 square feet of retail space, would be roughly $459,000. The estimate to improve OG Way is roughly $360,000. So if the applicant were to move forward on the project, they would install OG Way. They would obviously have a credit. So when they come in for their plans, they would obviously get a credit of $360,000. The remaining funds or balance of that, the applicant would be paying as development occurs. And the cost itself, the $458,000 does not include the acquisition of the 2 homes. Of course, one of the homes already being demolished. So the 53 single-family homes that we discussed, again, they're on the northern piece of the property. They're also proposing 2 tot lots and small open space areas, which are largely going to be bioswales. So the 2 lots would be right here, roughly 5,000 square feet, I believe is the one on the west side. The one on the east side slightly smaller. That would be used, and it would be maintained by the homeowners association. So these 53 homes would participate in the homeowner association, and they would be responsible for maintaining those tot lots. So access again would occur from Franklin Road, right around the middle of the parcel. There's not a drive approach there now, but they would be installing one. They would also have access directly from the intersection or from the signal light going northbound on OG. And then at the end of Keene Avenue or Keene Road, there would be an emergency access gate there. It would be gated, and that again would only be used for emergency purposes. And so that would not be an access road that anyone can come in and out of. The subdivision itself would not be gated, with the exception of that access road. So phase 2 would be the southern half. So the southern half includes 36 units and approximately 15,000 square feet of retail space. The northern half of the southern half includes 10 live-work units, and those live-work units are 3 stories. The ground floor would be a work unit where the upper 2 floors would be the tenants live. Those are commonly found in fairly large cities, and they're commonly used by either studios, hairdressers, makeup artists, so they can be used for an array of actual uses. The 2 buildings, which are the 2 southernmost buildings, there would be the ground floor would be for retail. The upper 2 floors would be for residences. Those would be townhouse styles units, and there would be 26 total. So while the living arrangements themselves are not commonly found in Yuba City, they do provide housing for a large segment of our population that, quite frankly, either doesn't want to live in a traditional home or they can't afford a traditional home, and they want something that's slightly more urban, or they want smaller yards, or quite frankly, simply a different lifestyle, which our housing element encourages. So the 53 units, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but they are proposing 0 lot lines. So that does not mean that the homes would be touching each other. What that implies is that one of the sides of the building would simply be touching the property line, and that just simply allows greater flexibility in the design. They would be 2-story. They would be providing front yards of 20 feet, which here in Yuba City, that's extremely common. Actually, every single family home in the city has 20 feet from the back of your sidewalk to the front of your garage, if not more. They're proposing tandem parking. There would be on-street parking, and they would also be providing decorative parkway streets with planter strips and decorative walls. Here's a couple of elevations of the single-family homes. They do have a rather contemporary appearance. They largely resemble row-type housing, which is commonly found, for example, in West Sacramento. This type of housing is pretty common. It's currently under construction. And here's just a couple of different elevations that staff has been partnering with the applicant to go over. The live-work units. Again, there's a total of 10 live-work units. They're 3 stories. There would be 20 spaces dedicated to these units. And actually, the last bullet point there is an error because access would be provided. Well, no, it would be provided from Franklin Road, just via the actual drive approach or the signalized intersection. Very comparable to the single-family homes. However, this has slightly more of a modern look with some different building materials, including corrugated metal. But that's not corrugated metal commonly found to build, say, shops. It has a very urban look to it, and it's commonly used in urban areas. So the mixed-use part of it, again, this would be along Franklin Road, 26 apartments, slightly more than 15,000 square feet of retail space. That retail space can be used for offices or traditional retail space in terms of walk-up businesses, and 90 parking spaces would be provided. So that would be the look along Franklin Road. In the conditions of approval, there are a handful of conditions that the applicant's amenable to that would require some minor modifications. For example, covering the exposed staircases, which were on some of the elevations. However, for the most part, in terms of materials, colors, and the massing of the buildings, this is what it would look like. Again, just a couple of different views of it. This is obviously looking from the top. Has a very urban look. Now we're going to get into some of the more details. So, as part of any new development, the city a number of years ago began to impose community facility district conditions, which Darren's going to be discussing this evening. The applicant is amenable to it. So what that means, that as part of the CFD, which is a services CFD, which would go to help fund future costs for fire, police services, to major street improvements, the applicant is open to implementing the CFD, which would not exceed $425 per year per unit. Those dollars would be collected during the property tax collection period, which would be placed in a pool. Those dollars would be then diverted to the city, and then the city would allocate those funds. There will also be a homeowner association for the maintenance of the private street, including the 2 tot lots that are in there, the block walls, and then the sewer system. The water system itself would be a public water system, just like all the other homes here in Yuba City have. However, the sewer system itself would be private. So with that being said, staff prepared an environmental assessment pursuant to the CEQA guidelines. We are recommending that the council adopt a mitigated negative declaration, which we distributed to both local agencies, including the Native American tribes, pursuant to CEQA. A traffic impact analysis was prepared by Ken Anderson. That traffic impact analysis concluded that no significant impacts would be created on either Franklin Road or any of the surrounding major roadways. We are also recommending that the council adopt a resolution to make necessary findings outlined in the staff report to approve the general plan amendment, the development plan, and the subdivision map. And we're also introducing the ordinance this evening, and we are requesting that the council waive the first reading. We will then come back to the city council at your next regularly scheduled meeting for the second reading of the ordinance for the rezone application. So that concludes staff's presentation, and staff's prepared to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the council at this point? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to open it to the public for any comments regarding it, supporting it, opposing it, any way. Seeing none, bringing it back to the council for any final comments or Action to be taken. I know this is something that I see, and many of us probably see these types of developments in other cities, and actually much more robust than actually this one is a much larger size. I've seen some that are, 3 and 4 and 5 blocks in size, just massive, and have provided, I guess small communities. Seniors will move into them, people that don't want big yards, providing a different lifestyle. I have a big yard. I may someday want to get down to just, hey, that's it. I'm done. No more yard. Just a minimal on that. And this provides some new units for that. I mean, it could. So something new and 21st century style things. That I'm looking for action for B, C, D, and E, and F.
Through the mayor?
Waiving the
Sorry.
first reading.
Through the mayor? Staff's recommendation of B, C, D, and F, waiving the first reading. Make a motion.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, unanimous vote. We got another, I guess, the 18th of next month we'll be back and hopefully and have a second reading.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your performance. You've done quite well this year. That's great. On this one. Okay, the second mass exodus. You can see that there's a lot of interest in some of these things. A few years of efforts and planning and finally finding out what hopefully is best for our community. Takes time sometimes. Public communication, we'll move on. You are welcome and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on items listed on the agenda when they are called. Public comment on items not listed on the agenda will be heard at this time. Comments on controversial items may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select representatives to express the opinions of the group. And we're not like HUD, we're not strongly saying, anyway. You don't have to do that, but we would ask it. Okay, were there any written requests?
One was received. You have it, Mayor.
Okay. So the written request for Amber.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I am here with Girls on the Run of Sutter County. We are here to personally thank Yuba City Council for the city's support during our recent spring 2017 season. The Girls on the Run program thrives solely on volunteers, in-kind partnerships, donations, and sponsorships. Therefore, the support shown from the city can be summed up into one word for us, and that would be remarkable. I wanted to take some time to talk about how the city supported us this season and to give some special thanks specifically to Diane Langley and the staff of the Public Works Department, her supervisor, Scott Chandler, who helped at our event to provide tables and chairs and pop-ups. Brad McIntyre and the staff at the Parks and Recreation Department for their space for providing a location for our community team to practice. Specifically, Sergeant Eschman for coordinating the Police Officers Association, bringing new Lieutenant Runyon, Sergeant Baker, and Officer Slade to serve at a donation breakfast for us. Councilman Mayor Cardoza, who attended the event and was there to support the POA. Councilwoman Preet Didball, who was actually the head coach of our community team again, and her participation in the video that I brought this evening to show you, and Darren Gale for public relations and program support. So with that, I would like to show you a video from our event that we just held on May 13th here in the community.
Thank you.
Girls on the Run Run is dedicated to creating a world where every girl knows and activates her limitless potential and is free to boldly pursue her dreams.
My name is Preet Goodhall, and I am coaching the community team here in Yuba City.
My name is Tamika Stowe, and I coach the Johnson Partner team.
For 10 weeks, the girls meet twice a week in small teams where they learn life skills through dynamic, interactive lessons and running games. The curriculum focuses on 3 key learning objectives: understanding ourselves, valuing relationships and teamwork, and understanding how we connect and can shape the world around us.
I remember we were doing a lesson about peer pressure and bullying, and one of the questions, although it wasn't a very serious question, it was, what happens if your friend keeps pressuring you to wear makeup? And one of my 4th graders said, I don't need to wear makeup because I'm beautiful on the inside and out already. And I thought it was just so awesome how she had this confidence about herself. And I'm very positive that the program is kind of gave her that boost to feel that great about herself.
Each season, the girls connect to our local community by participating in a give back project. For example, spending time with our senior citizens.
Had a great experience as far as the girls learning the history of Yuba City as well as Marysville from our senior citizens. But in turn, the senior citizens learned about FaceTime from our girls to be able to communicate with their grandchildren who are not close to them. So it's things like that that we don't realize that I think as a society we take for granted.
At each season's conclusion, the girls and their running buddies complete a celebratory 5K running event, which gives them a tangible sense of achievement as well as a framework for setting and achieving life goals. At Girls on the Run, we say, the finish line is just the beginning. Our program relies on community support and sponsors. We never want to turn away a girl due to financial barriers. For $100, you can support a girl within our community. Imagine what we could do together, one girl at a time. To find out more and how to get involved, please contact us. So again, I just wanted to be able to thank you guys for being a big part of this for Girls on the Run. Today with me, I brought 2 of our participants from this season. They have waited very patiently through a very long meeting to be able to tell you guys personally thank you and give you a thank you card. So I'd like to introduce Sydney Gale from our community team and Brooklyn Dara from the Terrebonne Elementary School site. They're going to present you with a thank you card signed by one of this season's Girls on the Run teams and give you each a Girls on the Run water bottle as a small token of our appreciation for the in-kind partnership you have provided during this season. Our next run is going to be on December 9th, 2017. It will be a public community run, and we hope again that we have the city's support. Thank you.
Somebody want to get a photo? Thank you. Of us together down there or not? Okay. Somebody standing up. Yeah, you can come up too since you were Margaret. You in the middle. One of the many events in the community that it's an honor for council members to be able to participate, support, and our staff so passionately involved. Even amongst all of our busy lives, and everyone has busy lives, some things are just worth worth going the extra mile and being part of. And thank you, members, for having been putting the extra effort out, and staff. Okay, moving on to written request. Parents of interested citizens, are there any more citizens that would like to speak on any other issues not on the agenda? Okay. Let's see, we're going to move on to, I flip through here real quick. Moving on to consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time that City Council votes on the motion, unless members of the City Council, staff, or public request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual action. Staff has requested to remove item number 11 from the agenda and has recommended no action from the council. They have stricken it out on my sheet here, so I'm looking for a action on the rest of the items through 12.
Move consent items 7 through 12, absent number 11.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. General items. Okay, moving on to disposition and development agreement for the Feather River Mill and associated properties, presented by Darren Gale, the Economic Development and Public Affairs.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I don't know if I should take it personally that my wife and 2 daughters left as I was getting up. So I promise they've heard about all these projects at home. So tonight, it's a pleasure to be before you on a project that's many years in the making. The city owns a variety of different properties, or used to own, the redevelopment agency, a variety of different properties. And this is a map of all of the former RDA properties. On the left-hand side, there's thank you, Gerald. There's a few properties over here which have been sold, so that has not been updated. But this demonstrates the commercial properties that the successor agency owns. And tonight we're here to talk about the Feather River Mill site, which is this parcel here and this parcel, so 7.5 acres. A little history. We really kind of have hopscotched around to kind of get to where we are today. In December of 2010, we entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with the Noyan Company. And today, in 2017, we're finally to the point that we can move forward with the project. Sorry. And it's really exciting. I mean, this has not been an easy process. But one thing I like to highlight is we went through a public process to identify a developer to work with the city. And that was a public process. And 7 years later, that developer continues to stay with us and has spent a significant amount of money and resources to move this project forward. And through that time, the state eliminated redevelopment agencies. We went through the process of identifying contaminations, needs for environmental remediation. And today, we have before you a DDA. A little bit about the Noyan Company. As I mentioned, a competitive process. He has significant experience in Fresno, really working with a variety of tenants. He has done work here. He is homegrown, a local Yuba City resident who grew up here and moved away. He has a great development team that understands how to remediate properties. He developed a project in Fresno, which is on top of an actual former landfill. There we go. That's appropriate. I started to say dump, but that's not the appropriate word. And if you go there today, it's some of the highest, well, it is the highest end car dealers are all on this development. So it's a beautiful project. And the project has adapted since 2010 to meet current market conditions. A little bit about the DDA. Number one, the project is being sold at an appraised value, which is $1. When we say $1, that's because the developer is taking on the liability to clean up this property, which will be over $1 million. And this appraisal was done by a top appraiser out of Sacramento. And they do a majority of the appraisals that we do on commercial property with the city. Another thing is the developer is required to begin remediation. After 90 days of close of escrow, the developer also has 180 days to close escrow on this project. It's also a requirement that Mehmet Noyan really remains the lead on this project, that he can't sell it off to someone else. And then also there's a timeline for development. I know that Mr. Noyan is here, and I believe he'd like to speak and maybe introduce, would you like to speak, Mr. Noyan? And introduce a couple folks who are with him. I know that he has one tenant that is very interested in the property, and a lot of this project really goes with that 4-phase improvement along the Bridge Street corridor that the council has talked about. And the moving forward, as you know right now, the Fifth Street Bridge replacement project is out to bid, and hopefully those bids will close real soon, and they'll be able to open up those bids very soon, which will begin that project, which will be really a catalyst for this project moving forward.
All you have to do is introduce yourself to the public.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Mehmet Noyan. I reside at 685 West Alluvial in Fresno. And I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank staff, Darren, and planning, and your public works people. This has been a long journey. 7 years is a really long time. My wife would tell you that I'm very impatient, and for me to be able to stay with something for 7 years is pretty remarkable. We all wish that this could have happened sooner. I couldn't have imagined back in 2010 that we'd be here 7 years later, but I believe things happen for a reason. And I think the reason is, in the 7 years since we started this project, the economy has improved. Hospitality is a much stronger basis than it was during the early part of 2010. There's industry, there's commerce, there's actual activity both in Yuba City and Marysville. And I really think by waiting, we've created a better product. So for that, I think it's been worth the wait. There's some people that I'd like to introduce today, people that travel quite a distance. Probably the most important person I'd like to introduce is my mother, Frances, my sisters, Angela and Nikki, and my niece, Kelsey. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience. I also have Mr. Prakash Patel, who is president of Lotus Management, and his wife. I'm not going to embarrass Prakash, but he has operated 18 hotels of different flags throughout Northern California and Oregon. They are currently, they operate the Holiday Inn Express in Oroville. They are in for plan check for a Holiday Inn Express in Chico, and the plan is to build a Holiday Inn Express on Feather River Mills. So I think his being here is evidence of the interest that we have in our site. So thank you very much, Prakash, for coming. The other people that I want to introduce are two friends of mine that will also be very, very involved in this. Jeff Croker, Jim Christian. Jeff is president of Croker Demolition and Excavation. Jim is Christian Construction. And I've worked with these gentlemen for 25 years. Darren alluded to the project that we built in Fresno. That was the old dump site or the landfill. That was a 235-acre piece of land that was a cotton storage facility that was an infill site that sat vacant for 40 years. I started in 1993. We had the alphabetic soup of environmental issues that started on the project. I had a lot more hair then, and it was a lot darker. So, but today, that project is 100% built out. It is worth about $500 million on a property that was on the tax rolls for a little over $1.5 million when we started. So it's been a very, very successful project. With the help of these gentlemen, we cleared the site, we covered up the landfill, we demolished the buildings, we paved 4.5 miles of streets. And so I'm bringing the same team of people that did the project in Fresno to Yuba City to work with us and also to be partners in the project with me as well. I have an architect out of Chico that you're probably familiar with, Scott Gibson. Scott has worked on other projects in the Yuba City, Marysville area. He will be working with us and Mr. Patel on the master planning of the site. We either have some targeted uses too. We have some retail, we have restaurant. I really have a strong desire because I know there's a need in Yuba City for some sort of a banquet facility. I'm going to target, there are actually local folks that are interested, and there's also some chains that do that. So that's one of my targets in the second and third phases of this project, is to make an aggressive approach to go after those guys. So we talked a little bit earlier about the project before. It's mixed use is the new mantra in commercial real estate. Retail, that was my background. Retail is changing. It's evolving into bricks and mortar. Seem to be going away, and it's all e-commerce. It's not all e-commerce, but it definitely is changing. Mixed use is a combination of residential, retail, office, and it's kind of a live, work, play environment. And that's what we want to create on this site. We think that there's a cohesiveness that can be done with the various uses that have expressed interest. So that's the end result. That's what I want to deliver to my hometown. There's a lot of pride in coming back here and doing this, and I'm just thankful that you allowed me to hang in here for 7 years. So thanks very much. If you have any questions of me or my team, please feel free.
Any questions, comments from council at this time? I remember 2010 when we were in competition with you at the Housing Authority.
Correct, yes, yes.
And you definitely did have a better product at that time, and what's resulting, it looks good. The
Thank you
state
very
of
much.
California threw a lot of wrenches into the mix there for a few years.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
And to the mayor, Mehmet, one of the things that I really want to say to you is thank you for sticking around. Thank you for believing in what can be done and what will be achieved at that site. A lot of my discussions down in Sacramento at SACOG have been around that development, and that certainly moved the marker forward for getting the Fifth Street Bridge where it is today, where we will receive the bids on that on Thursday, and open those and begin the process of the construction on that the new bridge, our Phase 2 project. We move forward into trying to complete Phase 3 as soon as we can get that 2-phase done, and that will be a whole new gateway into our downtown area, and certainly you're going to be that marquee piece that we look forward to being on that site. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
To the mayor for me.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Noy, me too. I just wanted to thank you for your time, your willingness to take this project to Yuba City. It's so nice that you're homegrown here from Yuba City. You've had a lot of experience, and certainly the resume to bring a successful project to us. You have, from what I've seen so far, developed an A team. You even have your family here supporting you in everything you're doing. I think that's great, and it means a lot. And couple this project with the mixed use in that area, along with the Fifth Street Bridge project, it's going to be basically a springboard into a vibrant future for Yuba City, and I appreciate your effort and time.
Thank you.
If you ever want to move back to an area that has lots of water and isn't as dry, we definitely have water in this area.
You have water. We have none.
Just thought I'd poke you a little for that. Is there any comment from the public? I'm going to open it up for that, just because it's such a big deal. Seeing none, like action from council?
Move staff's recommendation on moving this project forward into the next phase.
I'll second.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hey, we'd all love to second this one.
You would.
All in
great,
favor?
too.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, it's passed unanimous with encouragement. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just to remind the council, you were also acting as the successor agency. You
A and B.
You just took two actions. It was
A and B.
appropriate. I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, it was A and B. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have the
Awesome.
sign
Thank
agreement
you so
right
much.
here. So.
More people running out on you. Thank you for all showing up.
Great. So I have two more items.
Yes.
back to back for you. So the next one is the formation of a community or the resolution of intent for the formation of Community Facilities District CFD number 2017-1 to fund municipal services. A couple months ago, we gave a presentation to you a little bit really about the CFD, what it does. So I won't go into details other than to say this is a requirement of our 12 growth policies. We have 5 projects, including one this evening, that had this as a condition of approval or part of their development agreements. I will note that tonight's project, the CFD was approved for the single-family residential, not for the multifamily, as part of the condition of approval. And it's really to ensure that development pays its fair share. These are the services that the CFD could pay for. The ones in bold are what are included within our CFD. I'll go back to that just in case if you didn't have a chance to read that. And it is in the staff report also. Next is the process. The process where we are today is City Council Meeting 1, which is to adopt a resolution of intent and set the boundaries for the CFD and the maximum amount that can be charged. The next one, as you this evening hopefully approve a resolution of intent, it will set a public hearing for August 15th. And at that public hearing, our plan will be to bring a unanimous support for the CFD, and the CFD will actually be enacted that evening, and it will not require an actual vote of the landowner. You'll actually receive ballots beforehand. This is an area of the city which you cannot see the small parcels, but the 5 project is up here on the north is Valencia Estates, which is actually under construction. That's our first new development project since the recession, where they've broken ground. Walnuts Estates over here. This is next to Faith Christian School. Sutter Heritage down off of Walton and Smith, and then the projects that you approved this evening. Tonight we include all of them. We do not assume that all of them will actually want to come in to this CFD, and as a result of that, they will need to pay to do whatever it costs to bring forward the CFD in the future. All of those development agreements have a kind of a not to exceed number of 425. So approximately 550 total units are included in all those parcels. The maximum rate for single-family residential is 425, multifamily is 310, and the next milestone is the August 15th public hearing. We do have a consultant here who's been helping us on this, Jesse with New Economics, who he and his partner presented last time. They're also a financial consultant for us on the Bogue Stewart Master Plan. So I can answer any questions, but I would ask that you adopt the staff recommendation.
Any questions, comments? Oops. Questions, comments from the council at this time? Not needing a presentation from him? Okay. Looking for some action.
Through the mayor?
Yes.
And staff's recommendation?
Adopt a resolution. Intent. Okay. Have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? It's done.
Great.
Or continue the process.
Great. So the final issue this evening is an update on our annexation. So our first project was 7 years in the making. The second project's been a couple of years in the making with the CFD, and this one's not far behind. The LAFCO board in May adopted a resolution moving forward, allowing the city, if the council elects, to move forward with an election as relates to the annexation. In July, so next month, on I believe it's the 18th, we will present a staff report to the city council with a resolution to actually move forward with an election if the council so chooses. We are recommending that if the council does move forward with an election, that we do that through the county and through the elections office, and then an election would be held in early November. I do want to note that when we mention an election as relates to an annexation, at this point, the state law is that it's only for registered voters of the South Yuba City area. Property owners do not have a specific vote unless they live in their property or reside in their property and are registered voters. So that's where we are today. This has been a project that we've really had unanimous support from LAFCO in our application. There's been times where votes have kind of been different, where one or two people have voted one way or the other. But when it comes down to the merits of our application, the LAFCO board unanimously approved our application, that we met all of the requirements of the Cortese-Knox Act, which oversees the LAFCO process. So I can answer any questions that you might have. There are no specific recommendations. This is a note and file, but any type of feedback that you want to provide would be appreciated.
Any comments, questions from council members?
Through the mayor.
Councilman.
So, I mean, kind of going through the election process, and is an election required to do an annexation?
No.
So the effort behind the going to an election or going through an election process was that of the city itself?
So the process is residents have an opportunity to protest and write that they want it to go to an election. If 25% of either registered voters or property owners file a protest, it goes to an election. If 50% sign a piece of paper, then it actually kills the annexation. Staff went before LAFCO because we believed that the two gentlemen from Live Oak that are walking door to door, that if they went door to door and said, if you sign this piece of paper, your taxes won't get up, the assumption was they would easily hit 50% of the registered voters. So staff recommended to LAFCO that that actually gets forced to an election. They did not collect 25% of the votes. They collected about 300 of the 2,000 registered voters. However, they did not go door to door. That was just basically 300 of the people that are out there that I'd say in any given day are not supportive of annexing into the city because they believe that their taxes are going to increase and that they'll be required to connect to city water and city sewer.
The election process, as I see it, and this is just for general conversation and not directed as a question to you, Darren, is that as I sat as an alternate on the LAFCO board for the last meeting, I voted against this. I voted against it because fundamentally, I believe that an election by merely the individuals that are registered voters in that area disenfranchise the property owners themselves. Being contacted by a number of absentee property owners, individuals that live outside of our area but rent their property, have great objection to the fact that their resident could vote against being annexed into the city when they in fact want their property to come into the city through annexation. They've had long discussions. Two of these have had discussions with their tenants, and the tenants see it no other way. They've been sold a bill of goods. And I think that this is one of the problems that we're going to have is trying to move this forward in a very transparent way, but yet there's a limited number of people that will be able to vote on this, and that vote is not of the property owner. And I see that as a fundamental error, either in how the law is currently established. If we withdrew our application, we could start through the process again, and that, by my vote no, was to retain that position for this council to be able to at least consider the fact that this act disenfranchises the property owners themselves.
Okay, that begs to differ. More discussion on this before we move forward. Do we want to remove our application is basically what he's saying because of the disenfranchising of the property owners. Any more discussion on that?
And Mayor, if I may interject, we can include information on the July 18th a staff report and have a recommendation including that so that the council can have more information. Obviously, any discussion here would help us put together that staff report for your next meeting.
Right, because I know the 18th is the last day that we would be able to take any action in any different direction. So,
Actually, Mayor, Mrs. Locke attended the meeting with me with the Sutter County Elections Office. If we wanted to, we have 1 year from the May dates that LAFCO approved the resolution to hold an election.
okay.
If we
I
want to
meant
go
for having it in November.
if we want it
the
for
18th
November,
has to be
correct.
correct.
So there are more times,
Correct.
including if we don't want to use the county, we can hold our an election on our own date.
Yes.
We don't know exactly what that cost would be. So there are other opportunities.
And to the mayor,
Yes.
I would like to see this come back to an additional agendized item before this council, so those property owners can come, approach council, give their position, and including any other members from that potential area, so they can reach out to us and kind of give the council a greater sense of what the residents and the property owners feel, not about the annexation itself, but about the process.
And this is such a big change. Oh, that was weird. This is such a big change for those residents. I think it'd be and the landowners, I think it'd be prudent for us to take every opportunity to have their input into this and full disclosure for everyone and transparency. So the 18th would be good. And even then we could decide whether we're going to wait another year or to the next process. And we have some serious thinking here to do.
Mr. Mayor, I know that Mr. Gale will be out on that meeting, but staff will get something together either for the July 18th or the first meeting in August, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Mr. Gale will be out on July 18th, so we may bring that back for the first meeting in August.
I don't believe that there's a first meeting in August, but we can always hold one.
We'll make a determination. I know time isn't necessarily of the essence, but we do obviously want to advance this issue. But we also want to do it in a systematic way as to not to rush into it.
Well,
so we'll do some analysis and bring something back to you.
I think if we do want to try to make it to the November election, it has to be done. Even there, I think there's a 90-day before the election time, and there's a process of making sure it's filed properly with the county. If we're utilizing the county, we need to find out what those dates are.
Yeah, since this isn't a normal election year, Mr. Gale, correct me if I'm wrong, the county can hold this election because it's a mail-in election. As the mayor's saying, we need to hit July in order to have it in August, in November. But if we wanted to do it in December, if we wanted to do it in January, the county could still do it.
That is correct.
Okay. So it would we're normally programmed to have that November election. That's what we usually have. In this instance, it's unique, so it could trip out into December or January.
And as Mayor, as you were mentioning, there's an 88-day requirement to call for an election, pre-election, as you were mentioning, the 90 days mark.
So I guess I'd bring it back.
Okay.
I could also, even if we could call a special, meeting if we decided that we wanted to move on it this year. So however we would do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. Oh, you're going to clap for you, I guess, That's good. Business from the city council members. Councilmember Buckland.
The crowds have diminished. He even got a handshake out of it, a personal handshake out of it back there. Man, you'll bow to nothing back there, Darren. Thanks. Attended the SunSuite 100-year anniversary event over at the plant, and what a great opportunity that was to be able to enter the plant and kind of share it with the growers and some of the employees and our community. It was very interesting. In my prior life, anytime I entered the plant, it had to do with something necessarily not so good going on at the plant. There was either an issue there or injury or whatever. So that's when I would go into SunSuite. So to be able to do a tour of the facility and see it operational and see some of the changes that have occurred within that plant and the technology that they use for some of their line operations was pretty amazing. And the distances you walk to be able to see that were pretty. It was a good walk, probably a good half mile through the facility to be able to see two of the different lines that were operational at the time. Attended the CalCog meeting down in Sacramento, and the only thing I report out of that is there's an assembly bill. And these are some of the things that I think that we all need to watch, but Assembly Bill 805 really is being introduced down in the San Diego area, and our assembly simply looked at this as a localized issue, but it changes the voting structure of governance down in San Diego when it comes to their two transportation agencies mandating through state legislation that two mayors from the larger jurisdictions sit on it, that it be a weighted vote that occur down there. And this thing breezed through the assembly. So we are trying to reach out the best we possibly can as jurisdictions, as we believe that this sets two bad precedents for the state of California, that we reach out to our senators, any senators we have any contact with, as this thing will be going through some of the different hearings at the Senate. But like I said, it breezed right through the assembly, and we have a great fear that could happen to organizations, to include SACOG and some of the others, that would take away local voting powers, essentially. Also attended the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency meeting. Nothing of significant importance other than the projects are moving forward. There has been some funding denial by the state of California for some of the additional work that needs to be done. There's some mitigation work that has to be kind of cleaned up, but we look at wrapping up a lot of the projects and then moving forward to take care of a 3-mile reach here adjacent to Yuba City that was repaired by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1998, but not done to the same standards that the rest of the levee system is currently up to now, all the way up to Gridley. So moving some of that forward with some design money, and that was a great result of the meeting, as we can try to move that and get some of that work done before the next flood season to protect the 70,000 residents that could be affected by any type of levee issue here adjacent to Yuba City. Also attended the SACOG, which is the Sacramento Area Council on Government, the Board of Directors meeting. And we looked at a number of different issues and had a workshop that really looks at regional progress. And so we heard from some of the involved parties in Indianapolis as we look at different models, Indianapolis and St. Paul. And when we start looking at this mixed-use project that was brought forward before the council tonight, those are some of those very projects that we talk about, and then tying transportation to them as we see some changes occurring, especially in the millennial group on housing requirements, desire for housing, and also transportation. Today I had a conversation with a family of 4 that 20 years ago they sold their car They don't currently own a car. They ride bicycles. They lived in Portland, Oregon, and have relocated here for work, and they continue that lifestyle here in Yuba City. So we will see more of that as the younger generations, not necessarily riding around on bicycles, but we'll see, I believe, more of that as we talk about things like disruptive technologies and what the next 5 years will look like. Mr. Nguyen spoke very briefly on the brick and mortar going away and having to change and look at how we're going to provide and what services we're going to provide in the community. So I think Yuba City is taking a very forward looking approach on this. Passaic is also going to be moving into some different models that there will be, we'll be looking for some input for some civic input on this, and it's called Civic Lab. So you'll be hearing more of that from me in the future. We also did, and I'll just speak very briefly to it, we did as a council, in a very controlled way, we went up to Oroville to look at the construction site. One of the amazing things to me is how massive the construction site or reconstruction is going. The organization in how it's being mobilized and the amount of work that is scheduled, has been done, and will get done by November 1st is a monumental task of the construction companies that have been given the awards. I did a little 5-6 second video, put that out on Facebook, and as of tonight, I think there's 9,000 views. And that was yesterday at noontime. I put that out. And the comments back from the public have been incredibly on mark to wanting to know more information. And certainly, I think that we owe that to the public to provide more and more information related to the progress up at Oroville. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilman Cardoza.
Okay. I've attended, last couple weeks, attended the Regional Housing Authority meeting. Last week, council, we had our special marijuana workshop. Attended the Sutter County Homeless Consortium, Gilsizer Drainage District, the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, the U of Sutter Transit Authority meeting, the community meeting we had last week on the new water rates. For community events, we had a wonderful time at the Sunsuit 100-year anniversary. I attended lunch, and we had dinner tonight with the students at Summer at City Hall. Had a great time at both occasions. Went to Rayleigh Field last week. They had a press release for the new Connect Transit card, which I'm wearing. It's just like an ATM card. You can pick them up at our Sutter County Library or the Marysville Library. Put some money on it, and you can ride anywhere more or less in the North State, from Stockton all the way to Chico on the transit. So you can go from one bus to another, beep in, and away you go. There's no more punch cards. So that was a wonderful event. Quite a few people attended. It's a good time. This weekend, I attended the 18th Annual Valley Muffler Car Show. It was for the donations all went to the Cancer Center in Marysville. They had over 100 cars at the car show, and we served tri-tip and hot dogs to a little over 300 people. Like I said, we toured the Oroville construction area. We also attended the summer stroll, and I was foolish enough to enter the Hot Wings competition. Supervisor Flores and I had a little competition who could eat the most, and I ate one more than he did, and I probably had better heartburn than he did, but it was a fun time. And for chamber events, didn't do too much the last couple of weeks because we had a lot of meetings, so I had to be here instead of there. I attended one ribbon cutting at the North Cal Escape Room. If you ever want to have fun with the family, friends, or anybody, go there and see if you can escape out of a room. It's a real great time. Other than that, that's it for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councilmember Harris.
I have an escape room comment that I'll keep to myself. I too, a lot of this is going to be repeats, but Summer City Hall, what a great program for you young people, those of you who made it through the entire meeting, awake, right? But it was very good and pleasure meeting you. I'm not going to be able to make it to your graduation and the Mock City Council. I'm on my way to Vegas tomorrow morning, so, they slot machines trump you, I suppose. I don't know. But anyway, very proud of all of you. A great program. I think you're going to remember it for a long time. We've already had a request from a few of you I talked today at dinner to make it a little longer. And I think that's great. And it's good to hear that feedback from you. And you guys have all come together as a good group, and I hope you've learned a lot. I don't know how you could have kept from it if you paid attention. It's a really good program, and everything you've done, worked together, put that together. BMLC, the Beale Military Liaison meeting, I went down to that. I had my first meeting as far as you get invited to all the changes of command for the different units, or I'm not sure what the term is. But I attended the 9th Reconnaissance Wing, something with intelligence and surveillance change of command representing the city. And I tell you, it was very impressive. Sending pictures to my son. He's in the Air Force in Texas, and he was getting kind of a kick out of the fact that I was there in his world for a little bit. But it was nice. It was an honor to be there, honor to represent the city. Met a lot of good people, and looking forward to many more. So that was good. Also attended Sun Suite 100-year anniversary event. Very impressive. I've born and raised here, driven by that plant all the time. I remember when they built it, and it had never been inside even the fence or the building. But all that's going on there. The robots were amazing to see them doing the packing details, but very proud of the fact that they're right here in the middle of our town, our own little version of Willy Wonka, so-called. It's pretty good. Plymouth Street Stroll was awesome. Got to see Manny almost burn his face off. That was nice. It was nice and warm, that's for sure. A lot of people were smart enough to get water. Had to take a couple people inside. They're a bit ready to pass out. But afterwards, from what I understand, my family went later, and they said the crowd even got bigger. So that's a very successful event, and nice to have that. Councilman Buckland already mentioned our tour of the Oroville Spillway damage and repair. Very impressive. Even, you see it on video and on TV, and you know from experience that that doesn't do it justice. But even standing there, you can't even do it justice when your own eyeballs are looking at it until you get a perspective of there was a pickup truck, I believe, I remember, in the spillway, and the gal that gave us the tour said, the 2 Golden Gate bridges could fit inside that spillway. That's how big it is. And you do the math by looking at those vehicles down there, and it's true. It's massive, and they have a huge project ahead of them, and hopefully we'll get it right. Gil Sizer meeting, the Gil Sizer SLU meeting, that was basically personnel matters and a celebration of the retirement of a gentleman who gave 37 years of his life to that district. And I don't know how anybody can do that, but he did a heck of a job, and we're sending him off into retirement. Attended the meeting reference water rates. We had not very good participation. I believe there's maybe 4 members of the public there, plus Manny and me, sorry. And but they had some good questions, and of course, as usual, true to form, Dinah Langley answered every question professionally like a pro, and they walked out of there with their questions answered. So that was a good thing. And I attended 2 Yuba City Bears games. Go Bears! If you guys haven't been yet, they're a good thing. It's a fun family time, very inexpensive. You're laughing. You like the Bears? Oh no, I work there. You work there?
Oh, cool.
Well, then you know what I'm talking about, right? All right. I don't see your hat. I forgot mine today. That's good, though. Anyway, so I would encourage anybody, take a night. Almost every night there's a game over there, whether it's Gold Sox or the Bears, preferably the Bears. But good times. So that's it for me.
All right. Moving on to Vice Mayor Didball.
Awesome. A couple of same of the repeats, just because we did the same events. The summer, the Sun Suite 100-year anniversary was amazing. Great turnout, and just to see the inside. And I think it was really neat to see the folks that have been working there from generation to generation, and even the folks that have been there currently. I think there was a lady there that's been there 40 years. So I'm assuming she's going to retire soon, but just to see the generation of folks come through that plant. It was a really cool event to be there. Normal business as far as meetings, had the waste management meeting as well as the transit meeting. Normal business, budget, and contracts, just moving forward with that. And like Manny mentioned, the Connect card is now fully used throughout our region. I did the Oroville Dam and spillway site visit. That, as we said earlier, just doesn't, the pictures, the videos, things like that just don't do it justice to how amazing that work out there is. Everybody that's working, the heat was, I don't know how, we had a difficult time standing in the heat, and those workers out there are there 24/7 working on that project. So hopefully it'll be a good result. The completion date as of right now is November 1st, and we have invited DWR to come to our council meetings for updates. Terrell's going to be working on some of those too, follow up and see when they can get here. We will also be attending regular meetings to obtain updates. We'll get folks to attend from our part to go to their meetings as well. Just want to say congratulations to all the students who have come through this program. 2 weeks ago, we announced that the program just started. Now you're right at the end. Great job. Looking forward to hearing the projects, your mock city council meeting. You guys have done phenomenal. I love hearing the feedback because it helps us make this program better every year. So some of the feedback that we've already received, one of the big ones was to extend the program from 3 weeks to 6 weeks, which is amazing to hear because it does take away from your summer. But obviously there's an interest for it. I hope you all walk away from the program learning something. One of the feedbacks that I did receive over and over from several of you is that you didn't expect to learn some of the things and didn't even know some of the things that even existed. So walking away, just having a new found knowledge with how your city functions and what local government is all about. So really appreciate that feedback and looking forward to see your end product. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, 100-year celebration. Definitely, I was there. I was permitted to present a resolution and able to read it. Many of the times when these events happen, we have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 resolutions being brought up. This time, I was permitted to be first, so I was able to read my whole resolution without repeating what everybody else had said. So that was actually quite fun. Also had a little story about, it was confirmed as to the location and stuff by a gentleman that actually had been working there for a long time and came up here from Campbell, California area. He had worked there where it was originally at, the real original location, and then San Jose and some of the changes. Mr. Azevedo, I had the honor to speak with him, and that itself thrilled me personally that he had been there and involved for so many years. Let's see. They had a great prune food contest in there where they were saying who could make whatever, and then they had a competition. But then I went to the Environmental Quality Policy Committee meeting in Sacramento for the California League of the League of California Cities. One of the comments that struck with me with John was that removing local decision-making and control and setting precedents. In the past few years, we have done very well at fighting that, but this year does not seem to be a very good year for us retaining control. There were a couple of items that in my committee that basically they sold out, in my opinion, to having the state being in more control than us. And that's very disturbing because when the state tells us what we have to do and when we have to do it, it becomes very expensive, not only for us, but for the citizens that we have to serve in the communities. So I am not happy with this year serving on that. For some reason, it's a bad year. Like they said, we toured Oroville Dam Spillway Project. I'm very engineering in how I think, and I was asking questions dealing with more of the engineering side of it, and I got some great answers because one of the the ones that gave us a tour was a very high-level engineer on that, and had been there since the very beginning of the failure. So I was like in a candy store getting information from him. Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, attended that. There are some definite changes coming forward with how we're going to have to approach some of our asks for money and grants and stuff. We're going to have to make some changes because some of the people are changing their ideas on how for us to have to do it. And so we're having to do our normal adjustment. Let's see, summer at City Hall, loving it. I got to speak for part of a morning about the responsibilities of the mayor and the council, and that was enjoyable. Gil Sizer, we're actually changing the management part of it from Yuba City more to the county to decide, who does all the reporting and the employees and things of that. So we're making some changes there based upon some future. What is Gil Sizer Slough District going to look like in the future? County had some concerns, so they had to take it over to work those out. And then what we're going to be doing is on Friday the 23rd, we're going to be doing a support rally for the funding that our state of California legislators just seem to not understand that you need the money for these these levee projects to upgrade them. Dam levee okay, whatever. The levee projects, and that the same channels that move the water and keep the water in for flood are the channels that move water to areas they want to have water that doesn't have it. And they can't seem to get it into their heads that those levees need to be in great condition. So if there is a failure, or what if there is a failure? Well, that becomes interrupted because of, or contaminated, or the water supplies going towards them. And they just haven't figured that out yet. And so we're going to be having that on the 23rd with Simdeman and the senator, and I'm going to be speaking about a Lower Feather River Corridor Management Plan that will allow us to dredge the river, wet and dry style of dredging, removing of sedimentation, since we've had so much slough into the river and causing difficulties in there for many different reasons. Other than that, I have nothing else. I will be attending your council meeting, and I will be also at the graduation part of it. So it's going to be fun watching you go out with all your new wonderful knowledge and understanding and opened eyes to where there's a lot more out there than you could ever believe. Opportunities. Is there anything from more from staff or anybody else? Meeting adjourned.